Today, in the Women of Integrity series, we're going to be talking about a very important topic for our pursuit of integrity, and that is how we relate to men and boys. So the principle that we're going to talk about today is that a woman of integrity protects the honor of a man. So we need to look way back in the book of Genesis before the sin entered the world to see what God's design was for men and women. And I am reading from Genesis 1:27 in the ESV version. It says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." So God created both males and females in his image. And because our men and boys are image bearers, we owe them respect because they reflect attributes of God's character to us. And our culture is sending very different messages about men and boys. As a wife, as a mom of 2 teenage boys, this deeply concerns me that men are being devalued and criminalized just for being men. This is not what God's design is. God's design allows women of integrity to uphold the value that men intrinsically have because they're made in the image of God. One thing that we can do that's very countercultural is to affirm the value of men and boys, not to step on them to make ourselves feel better. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't address issues of men sinning against us in their dominance that comes from a sinful desire. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about upholding all the many good things that there are about men and boys that we should honor and celebrate regularly. And we need to send this message into the culture to keep showing people that God loves men and boys, and so should we. So where did the problem start? Well, it's after sin entered the world, and I could do an entire series based on Genesis 1-3, but I'm just going to zero in on this today. This is when the Lord gave out the curses for sin. So he says to Eve in Genesis 3:16, "I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." So just that second portion I'm going to zone in on. There have been quite a few different interpretations of that portion. Your desire shall be for your husband. Some translations say your desire will be to control your husband. And I think that this is a natural desire in us, that we want to fix our boys, we want to fix our men, our husbands. And that goes back to this curse. But we need to let them be who they are and affirm them and gently come aside them and encourage them to grow, just like we would want to be treated by them. So I have several interesting books on marriage that really have helped me, and I'm just going to share 2 of them with you today. And I want you to think of what I'm saying. Even though these 2 books are written about marriage, I think the principles apply for boys as well as men. Any men that you're coming into contact with, not just your husbands. So keep that in mind as I share these principles. So the first book I want to talk about is Have a New Husband by Friday by Dr. Kevin Leman. Dr. Leman has a really great sense of humor, and he shares it in a really winsome way in his books. So they're a fun read, even though they're about topics that sometimes step on our toes, but we need that kind of correction. So I want to read to you about these basic needs of men that he touches on. He has decades of experience as a Christian counselor, and that's where he's writing from. He says, "In all my years as a therapist, I've never had one man who has been respected, needed, and fulfilled by his wife come to my office to seek a divorce. If it happens, I've never seen it. Why? Because those three basics are the foundation for your husband to be the man he's intended to be, and you'll be much happier and more satisfied in every respect because you paid attention to those key basics. Now, what are those basics? What men need most are to be respected, to be needed, and to be fulfilled. Those are needs that we can seek to meet as women of integrity for our men and our boys." I just wanted to read another tip to you because he shares all kinds of practical advice in this book. Highly recommend it to you. He says, if you want your husband to know something, say something, or do something, simply ask him. No games. Be specific and straightforward and communicate respectfully. And I have had to live this out in my own family with my husband and my two boys. I have noticed that they only want to hear one thing at a time. They don't like a list of 2 or 3 things, and they want me to say it in bullet point form. It needs to be short and to the point. Another tip that Dr. Leman gives in this book, it's pretty hard to hear, but I have put it into practice and it helps a lot. He says, take what you want to say as a woman and cut it by 90% when you want to deliver it to a man. That hurt because I like to express myself verbally, but as I learned to do this, if I give a tidbit of information, my men in my life can always ask more questions, and they will do that if they want to know more information. That way they don't get overwhelmed and they still feel like they're being respected. So let me just run down. He has a little box in here that is about 9 things you can say to get your man's attention. I'm just going to select a few out of here that I feel are good for us as women of integrity. And these are all non-threatening, encouraging statements. Honey, help me understand something. I don't have a clue, and I really need your help. Can I tap into that wonderful, logical, linear thinking brain of yours? You're so good at fill in the blank. I was wondering, do you think it would be a good idea to fill in the blank? That's another big thing. I think that our men really want to be included on our decisions more. We women make a ton of decisions, but I think they like being included or at least asked for their opinions. That's what I found in my personal experience. Here's really 2 more really important ones. I'm sorry, will you forgive me? And finally, what do you think? So seek his advice, seek his opinions, include him in your decision making. This goes for young boys up to our men. And I think that my boys have communicated with me more because I included them in decision makings when they were young. What we would have for dinner, what restaurant we'd go to. They liked being included. And we can be women of integrity by admitting that we want to have the male's opinions in our lives. Another book that is really interesting and quite different from most books on marriage is one by my friend, Dr. Debbie Smith, and it's called Ephesians 5 Romance, The Truth About Love. Now, she has quite a few different perspectives to share as a Christian therapist, and I really appreciate her take on some of these ideas. So she tackles Ephesians 5 with a lot of grace. Can be a controversial passage, but I like what she has to say here in terms of applying Ephesians 5 to our relationships. She says, using some of the most romantic words in the Bible, Paul describes what the male-female relationship should look and feel like for a pair who have chosen to follow Christ's example as head with the church as his bride. Ephesians 5:21, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And she continues on. Basically, Paul tells us that men and women are equal, yet different. Both are created in the image of God to work together in harmony, and each is designed for a unique role in the relationship. One is creatively designed to lead, and his partner's trust and respect are essential for him to be able to lead well. The other is creatively designed to follow, and her partner's love and understanding are essential if she is to follow well. So I want to continue on with another quote to expand on this. And she talks about the man's need to be trusted and respected. And this is one of the most informational and interesting parts of her teaching, I think, that she says that men are actually more sensitive than women. That's a mic drop, right? But this is what she says. Researchers have found evidence that male infants are more emotional than female infants from birth until at least 6 to 12 months of age. Infant boys cry more frequently and intensely, coo and smile more often, and experience more rapid fluctuations in emotional states than do girls. However, by 2 years of age, there is already a noticeable reversal in verbal expression, and by 6 years of age, there is a noticeable difference in facial expression as well. It says, furthermore, boys seem to have a natural tendency to express their feelings more through action than by talking about them. Whatever the reason, boys demonstrate an ability to avoid overt responses to emotion between 4 and 6 years of age. Interestingly, about the same time they usually enter kindergarten. So, what she's saying is, I think this is really hopeful for us, that our men are experiencing the same amount of emotions that we do as women, if not more, but they just have been naturally and culturally conditioned to keep them under wraps. And I think that a woman of integrity acknowledges that men have feelings too. And what she does is works hard to protect those feelings, to honor those feelings, to understand those feelings, and to draw them out of her males. I think women are wired to be connectors, to be nurturers. It's more natural for us to talk about our feelings, and that's a gift that we can give our men. We can be the wise people who draw the words out from a deep well, like the Bible tells us to do. But we only do that if we come with a spirit of integrity, of wanting to do the right thing to please God and to honor other people. So I'd like you to think about all these truths that I've given you in the worksheet. I'd like you to dig in and ask yourself, which relationships do you have right now that could benefit from the applications of some of the truths that you've learned in this session? Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that this session has given you new ideas about how to be a woman of integrity in relating to the males in your life.